In Australia, we encourage people to put money aside for when they retire. In fact, we're all worried that as people get older, there won't be many young people to feed the furnace for pensioners. Therefore, the Australian government has put together a very tax-effective program called superannuation. Basically, it's a bribery system by the Commonwealth of Australia. We will give you, says the Commonwealth of Australia, massive tax incentives to put money into your super fund, often around the 15% mark, sometimes even less, sometimes more, but roughly around 15%. And when you take it out, you might be able to get it tax-free. When it's earning income, you might be able to get that income tax-free as well. So superannuation is a tax haven. But one of the fears that people have is that I don't want to put my super with some sort of union-controlled industry fund in the Rialta building in Melbourne. I want to control the super myself. That is called self-managed super fund. And you can have between 1 to 6 members in your self-managed super fund. Today, we're going to build a self-managed super fund, see how they operate, and see the requirements, because there are a lot of requirements in running a self-managed super fund. They're like one-day-old babies. They need a lot of nurturing and a lot of love, continuous nurturing and a lot of love. My name is Professor Brett Davies, and I'm a barrister to the High Court of Australia and a partner at Legal Consolidated Barristers and Solicitors. So you can see the law firm has many hundreds of different documents you can build on our website, on our law firm's website. And here's the page on self-managed super funds. So let's start from the bottom. You can replace a lost self-managed super deed. You can change the name of a self-managed super fund. There's updates, because self-managed super funds are a bit like a motor vehicle. They need an update every 5 to 7 years, particularly when there's a change of government. You can update just for the product disclosure statement, for the binding nominations. That's what happens when you die. Upgrade for the deed only. Upgrade if you want to change the trustee. Or we'll do everything, which most people just opted to do an update. There is a power of attorneys that you can build in case your husband or wife gets sick and you want to continue to operate or control the company. Reversionary pension kits are for people that are in retirement phase and don't want the super to go out of the superannuation regime. They don't want it to leave the self-managed super fund when they die. You do a reversionary pension. All these, of course, come standard in the self-managed super fund deed we'll build in a minute. You can build a commercial lease agreement. That's when your super fund owns some property, commercial property, and wants to lease that commercial property either to a related party of the super fund or even to a third party. Self-managed super fund loans, that's when you want to lend money to a non-related person, like a bank lends money. You can also do that as a self-managed super fund. You can vest and get rid of the self-managed super fund. You can set up just an investment strategy. You get that as part of the self-managed super fund deed, but that's updated every 4 or 5 years. It's updated continuously, but every 4 or 5 years you want to build yourself a new investment strategy. You can, when you have your self-managed super fund, over 90% of people have a company running their self-managed super fund. 90% of Australians that have self-managed super funds will have a company running the self-managed super funds, and that company will be a special purpose company because you get reduced ASIC fees, and you can convert an old company to a special purpose company, or you can build a brand new special purpose company. But today we're going to build a self-managed super fund. So there's a full sample of the document you're building. Now, obviously, how you answer the questions, the covering letter, there's a law firm's covering letter, will set out how to print the document, signed by a partner confirming our law firm prepared, our Australian law firm prepared the self-managed super fund deed. There's minutes, more minutes, and there's the deed itself. So we're going to build that document today. If you want to know what questions are going to be asked, there's a checklist for all our documents. And there's a training video you're watching at the moment. And these are some of the latest rulings and how self-managed super funds work with the latest budget changes. How do super funds work? Must all members be trustees? What are the kick-in prices? the rates that you must pay your spouse and if they're working in the business. I'm going to press the big green button. I'm going to start building a self-managed super fund between 1 to 6 members. So I'd have a super fund, self-managed super fund with just 1 member, 2 members, 3, 4, 5, or even 6 people can be members of the self-managed super fund. Now I could pick up information, the data from an old document I've built. So we might have an accountant that might have done 600 or 700 documents on our website. They might just pick up the data they did for the Mr. and Mrs. Smith and bring it into the self-managed super fund to save them having to retype in the Mr. and Mrs. Smith's details. But I'm going to start the super fund from scratch. So the name of the super fund, well, I don't know. I don't know what to call my self-managed super fund. And what does that even mean? Well, over here, have a look and you'll see that there are hints on the requirements of what a self-managed super fund is. So here's the rules. Now with the name fund, it can be anything. So the most common self-managed super fund name is a Smith super fund. Of course, there's a lot of Smiths in Australia, but that's a bit boring. So why don't we call it Hoopy Super Fund? And the address, and I've now got the information, and the green tick is there. It's a green box at the moment. Press next. Now, because I press next, it means I've answered the previous question correctly. So the logic flow in our documents is very tight. Oh, Professor Davies, I don't like tight logic. I'm a freewheeling sort of person. I don't mind as our client you being freewheeling, but this is our document. It's got to be exactly as our law firm wants it to be. So you're going to get this document as a locked PDF, and the questions are strictly interpreted to make sure it complies with the SIS, with the superannuation legislation. So the members, you can have 6 members in a self-managed super fund. In this instance, I'm just going to have 1. One member. If I have 1 member, I must have, and there's a set of rules, so there's a very tight logic flow. If I have only 1 member, I must either have another person as trustee, because you've got to have 2 trustees if you've only got 1 member, but in this instance I'm going to have a company anyway. So that's the member, it's just me. All the members are trustees. If I do that, then I must have a co-trustee. Very uncommon. I am going to opt, because my accountant and my financial advisors told me I should have a company as a trustee, and I think they're right. There used to be a debate when I first started practicing as a lawyer in 1988. About 70% of self-managed super funds, or they used to be called excluded superannuation funds in those days, had mum and dad as the trustees. That horse is bolted. I think you really want to have a company as trustee. So I'm going to assume that you've built yourself a company and that it's a special purpose company. Why a special purpose company? For no reason other than you get lower ASIC fees. Lower Australian Securities Investment Commission annual fees for a company are dramatically reduced if it's a special purpose company. And you can build that on our website, and you convert an old company to a special purpose company on our website as well. So I'm going to repeat this again. The only reason why you would have, instead of using a normal company, why you'd use a special purpose company is to reduce the yearly annual ASIC fees. Any company could be a trustee of a self-managed super fund, any proprietary limited company, but you generally want your proprietary limited company to do one thing. It can wear many hats, but generally your accountant advisor will recommend that your company only do one thing, and that is be trustee of a self-managed super fund. And for that reason, it's worthwhile converting it to a special purpose company to get your reduced yearly ASIC fees. So I've got myself a proprietary limited company. called Keep Super Simple, Proprietary Limited. All Australian company numbers have 9 digits. Australian company number, I don't know what that is. Well, there's a hint on that. It stands for Australian company number. I don't want to have a co-trustee. Well, that's fine. That's where you're having a company. See, there's lots of hints over there. And you can telephone the law firm anytime and speak to a lawyer to help on answering these questions. So, I've got a company. It doesn't have to be a special purpose company, but in this instance it is. Because I've registered as a special purpose company. Now, the reference is just to help accountants, financial advisors and lawyers that build hundreds of documents on our website. So they might well, in your case, if you're only building 3 or 4 documents on our website, you might just want to leave it as self-managed super fund. But if you're building hundreds of documents, and if this is the Keppel self-managed super fund, then you can save all your documents for the Keppel family into that directory on our law firm's website. Let's say I'm an accountant, I've got a corporate logo, I'd like that to go on next to the Legal Consolidated corporate logo. Good advertising, good marketing for the accounting house. Remove Legal Consolidated logo. You would not do that unless you're another lawyer. A lot of lawyers white badge our legal documents, so they remove Legal Consolidated. They'll get our covering letter on our law firm's letterhead, but our corporate image will come off all our documentation. They'll badge it with their own law firm's regalia. Print, bind and post, $110. I don't need that. I've got my own printer and I've got my own binder. Check this box and one of our lawyers telephones you to review and explain the document. I don't need that in this instance. So I go to summary. And now this is where I get a chance to just check spelling, grammar, make sure everything's correct, because I can go back in. Now, if I've made a mistake, I've built the document, I've made a mistake, it doesn't matter. You can email us and we'll give you a voucher to unlock it. And you can change it for free. Oh, Professor Davies, no, I want this document as a Microsoft Word document so that I can fiddle with it. We're not going to let you fiddle with it. This is a legal document that is going to last for potentially hundreds of years, this deed. While you continue to have members, there's no law of perpetuity. This document has to be drafted in strict compliance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Australia and state government laws as well. Therefore, we will not let you have it as Word documents. It comes as a lot PDF. But if you need to change it, let us know and we'll let you change it through our system again. So, Hoopy Super Fund is correct. Member's name, that looks fine. Address, that's correct. That looks good. I'm happy with that. I've now built my self-managed super fund. I'd like to have a look at it. So I can see that I have a self-managed super fund deed. I've got my product disclosure statement and I've got my self-managed super investment strategy. Very exciting. So what I've now built is pretty much everything I'm going to need to start my self-managed super fund. So I'm going to go to open the locked PDF. And there it is. So the first thing you'll see with any of our documents is, thank you for instructing us, Legal Consolidated, Australian law firm, thank you for instructing us to prepare the attached self-managed super fund deed. It's addressed to the client, not addressed to the accountant, the lawyer, or the financial advisor. It's addressed to the client. It's how to print the document, the latest rules, reversionary pensions, minute to establish the self-managed super fund and also confirm the new members or the members, in this case is one member. There's the deed. With all the latest rules and regulations in it. So with the SIS legislation, what's that? That's the superannuation industry superannuation regulations. which is the touchstone. But you can see the number of acts of the legislation. That's only just a number. We're very regulated with our self-managed super funds and with superannuation generally, particularly as it's a tax haven. It's one of the very few tax havens in Australia. We're a very overtaxed country, and the only two real tax havens is a three-generation testamentary trust and a will, and superannuation. With self-managed super funds, there were two types of self-managed super funds, regimented and flexible. Now, what used to happen when there was very few changes in superannuation, you would have a regimented deed, which means that you would have it to be 300 or 400 pages in length and would set out all the rules under the superannuation legislation. But then over time, through the 90s and the 20s and into the 2020s, what we found is that laws are changing so fast, you're better to have a flexible, very short self-managed super fund deed and rely on the facts that the legislation will allow you to do things or not do things. And that way you're not updating your self-managed super fund once, even twice a year. So the deed is subservient to any changes to the law, which is how a modern self-managed super fund deed is now drafted. Trustees' powers, well, Professor Davies, why don't just make it all the powers of a natural human being? Yes, that's good, and we do that. But unfortunately, the courts have said over and over again that if you want a power, you'll have to put it into the trust deed. Same with family trusts, unit trusts, bare trusts, and self-managed super funds. So you've got to pile on all these rules and these powers so the self-managed super fund trustees can continue to manipulate and use the self-managed super fund to the highest possible chances. You might want to borrow money, you might want to lend money, you might want to buy assets offshore, and this will give you as much power as you can. Deal with the members' entitlements. If a member's insolvent, this gives you power to try and stop or slow down the money coming out of the self-managed super fund. So because there's a war, if you go bankrupt, the trustee in bankruptcy is trying to suck all your money out of your super fund and you want to protect it. This deed is designed to help that when you're in pension phase. So dealings do different things. You can underwrite and subwrite risk. Oh, Professor Davies, I'm never going to want to do that. Probably not. But it's there just in case. Because when you and your spouse die, your children can continue on with this self-managed super fund deed. They don't have to necessarily liquidate the positions and the assets in the self-managed super fund. So this deed may go on for potentially hundreds of years. And in hundreds of years' time, who knows what we'll be doing? Living in space, living on another planet, living in the ocean. So the document's got to be very widely drafted to protect not only you and your spouse, but also your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Can you transfer monies from another super fund into this fund? Yes, there's a transfer from another fund opportunity there. Can I transfer money out of the self-managed super fund? Yes, of course. There's a power there. I don't think I'd ever use that, Professor Davies, but it's there nonetheless. Payment of pensions and automatic updating of pensions. When a person is legally disabled, there are Centrelink issues, and a person you can't generally hand money to a person so they can receipt for it. And if they don't have mental capacity to do that, then this clause deals with that. So a person that suffers a disability or vulnerable can still gain benefit from their self-managed super fund. Similar clause in most Australian wills as well. You can't hand money to disabled people unless there's power in that. Payment to bankrupts, trying to protect anyone that's bankrupt. Authorised investments. Well, it says you can invest in pretty much anything you want. Oh, Professor Davies, that's not what we're about. We're ultra conservative. We only invest in highly conservative listed shares that are on the British, the London Stock Exchange. Look, you do what you want to do. Your investment strategy will limit you to what you want to do, but this deed has got to allow you to do whatever you want to do. You can't restrict in the self-managed super fund. You can't restrict it. You can restrict it if it says you can. Let's have a look here. Derivatives, futures contracts. They're if you've done calculus at school, they're buying bits and pieces of rights like options into the future. They're highly volatile. My super fund doesn't get involved in that. But you want to have it in the deed just in case that's a strategy you want to follow. Who knows what's going to happen? Real, personal and chattels and shows as in actions. Wow, that's going back. So real is real estate, commercial property, factory in West Virginia, block of flats in Double Bay in Sydney. That's real property. Chattels are your fountain pen and your car and things like that. That's a chattel. I've got lights and things. My practice manager sets. This is my office actually, and I've set it up as a way of doing all my videos. But all these chattels, they're chattels. They're not fixtures to the real estate. And the third thing is shows as in action. So there's only three things you can have in Australia: real property, chattels, and shows as in action. And a shows in action is something you need to sue to get value out of. So a check in itself doesn't have you can't eat it. You can't do certain things with it. You have to sue if you need to get value out of a check. So that's a shows in action. You can buy whatever you want to do. Now, what you decide as your self-managed super fund is a question for you and your financial advisor and fellow members and trustees of your self-managed super fund. But again, I'm trying to give you the correct view that this self-managed super fund deed is not there to restrict anything you want to do in the future. It's as wide as possible. You run an overdraft. You can enter into a full recourse or instalment warrant. Well, that's not legal. You cannot borrow money on a full recourse basis. Well, that's true in the 20s, but it may not be true in the future. Now, the way you borrow money at the moment is through an instalment warrant arrangement. That's true. So this self-managed super fund deed is allowing you to do anything you want, subject to the rules of the Commonwealth of Australia as they are from time to time over the next hundreds of years. Forfeiting benefits, the role of the trustee, members and beneficiaries, notices, no partnership. This is really important, and it should be in not only your partnership agreement, but also should all be in testamentary trust and three-generation testamentary trust in your wills too. You should not be in a position where you appear to be in a partnership relationship, because partners are jointly and severally liable. And this clause should be in every single lease agreement, will, licenses. Everything should have a no partnership clause. And there it is there, this common seal of the company. Binding nominations allow you to do non-lapsing binding nominations. Membership applications in the future, so that is for ASDF Davies to join up, but also there's a blank one. So as time goes on, additional people can join your super fund. So that is a self-managed super fund. That's how the deed operates. The document comes with a product disclosure statement as a separate document. So a product disclosure statement is What you need to know to run your self-managed super fund. Oh, Professor Davies, back when these laws were proclaimed, product disclosure statements, my accountant, financial advisor, my lawyer said product disclosure statements are a waste of time. In fact, I was the only one in Australia that said you must always, always, always do a product disclosure statement, because they explain how a self-managed super fund works. Oh, Professor Davies, are you sure? Because, my wife, myself, my son and my daughter, the four of us, we're already running the self-managed super fund and we know how they work. No, you've got to have a product disclosure statement. And also, if you've got an accountant, advisor or a lawyer, they're going to demand you have a product disclosure statement, because what happens is that as soon as I had a call only a few minutes ago from a wife that's just left her husband, and the self-managed super fund's gone crazy and she's now complaining about it. Now, what she can do is she can go back to the accountant, the advisor and lawyer and say, my husband stuffed up and so did these professional advisors. They never gave me a product disclosure statement. She did have a product disclosure statement, but if she didn't, she can argue she didn't know what was going on and she can attack. So there's your product disclosure statement. Very, very valuable. Look, you might already know all this, but it's still there and it helps guide. It's there to help guide people in running the self-managed super fund. And the third document you get as a locked PDF is the self-managed super fund investment strategy. So this is what and only a financial advisor and yourself can give advice here. So this is only the legal side of what is required for an investment strategy. So we've gone through it all from ATO desktop audits. These are best practice in the self-managed super fund investment strategy. So go through it together, the objectives of the fund, the insurance, have you considered insurance? These are some of the requirements at the Australian Taxation Office, both in writing and also in their private working papers will require. And if you get audited, if your self-managed super fund gets audited, the first thing they do is look at your investment strategy to see if it's complying. So there's things you can invest in. You'll handwrite those things in. You'll probably do it once a year. And there's also a diversification strategy as well. So therein is your self-managed super fund deed. Only your advisor and accountant can give you advice on whether you should set one up or not. As a tax lawyer, I'm telling you now that they're like one-day-old babies. They're wonderful. I really enjoy them. My wife and I really enjoy our self-managed super fund. And when my son turns 18, I'm looking forward to getting him as a member of the fund at the moment, becoming a member of the fund in his own right. If you need help building this document, answer as many questions as you can, and then telephone us and we can help you draft any aspect of this document that you require. Enjoy your self-managed super fund and telephone us anytime.